let's see. Let's move this around so that I am looking at the camera when I'm looking at the stream. To be honest, you probably don't want to watch this stream. I'm just playing around with the software, seeing how things look. I have little dogs in the background over there. Whoop. They bark a lot, so we may bark a lot. Also backlit, which kind of stinks. All right. I'm going to get a drink. You think I should post this link somewhere? I don't know. Hold on. I make this mildly terrible drink, which is instant espresso powder and oat milk and a little bit of hot water. I fill the cup about that much, stir it up, and it's a little bit of a caffeine boost. But yeah, nobody else likes it except me. All right, I think I'm going to put this on Twitter just for fun and see what happens. Okay, I have put the link up on Twitter. I'm not sure anybody will actually come by, but I figure I'll just I'll go 30 minutes and we'll see what happens. Sort of wish I had done this on my iPad so that I could take it down into the shop. I need to replace the hot end on my 3D printer. But just do some paperwork and see what happens. What might happen is that nobody comes in. I've been looking at Twitter a lot lately, and it's really interesting. There's people who are on it all day, every day, and they tweet all of the time. Ah, there's one person there. Hi, Lori. Welcome. But I was just talking about Twitter and the weird thing that I've noticed. I've always been sort of a casual Twitter user for, I guess, more than 10 years, where I just sort of take out my phone and check it every now and then. But I'm noticing now that I'm sort of doing it as part of work is that there are people who tweet hundreds of times a day, I think, about everything. And I had never noticed that before. I don't know if that's a new phenomenon or if that's something that's been happening for a while, but it is sort of wild. I don't know if I like it, but yeah, it seems like it's really bimodal in some ways. You know, most of the people I follow, they'll tweet maybe once or twice a day, and yeah, I'm not sure. I guess some people just leave it on as they're working, and so anytime a thought swings through their head, they just tweet it out, and it's kind of cool in its own way. You know, like they could look back on their timeline, their like profile timeline, and see their whole life just like right there. So it's sort of a kind of journaling, I guess. But I usually only tweet. Well, I tweet jokes a lot, and then I tweet quokka a lot. But I don't really tweet things like what I'm eating for lunch or that I ran into somebody, that sort of thing. Kind of excited about today because I get to go down into the shop and do recording of the first step in making mycelium plastics. So I'm putting together a video about, I want to do a series of, sort of biomaterials and things, but I'm doing definitely one video about mycelium plastics, which is the sort of invisible part of mushrooms. And so yeah, I'm excited. I get to go. I've got a refrigerator full of 3 sort of football-sized bags of the growth material that you can just buy online. And so today I'm going to go and add a little bit of flour, a little bit of water, shake it up really good, and then put it into a dark place so that it grows into its own plastic. Oh yeah, Lori, for sure. I do see people using it. I wonder if it is mostly independent people who don't have like work Slack or some other busy place where chat streams go by. I wonder if the people who are independent work that way. I definitely use Slack more. I definitely use Twitter more when I'm not doing a contract or something with a company that wants me to be on Slack. I get burnt out on Slack very quickly. So yeah, that's interesting. I'm sure somebody's done this market research, right? If Twitter probably has done this market research, but independent people have done this, where they ask people how they use it and they try to figure out what are the commonalities between people that use it one way or the other. Well, and as I become more of a content creator here for doing things like this, I think I'm going to have to figure out some balance where I'm talking about the stuff I'm creating, I'm doing all the usual stuff that I've always done, just sort of being on Twitter, being a human on Twitter, but then also trying to figure out the balance of how much time should I spend there versus going down to the shop and making mushroom plastics. Yeah, the mushroom plastic stuff is really cool because, here, I'll put a link in the chat. So, yeah, so this place, it's part of this group of companies that do a lot of stuff with mycelium. They make like shipping materials that go around things like they go around things like wine bottles. You can ship it instead of using styrofoam or some other kind of plastic foam. You can actually grow this sort of foamy mycelium plastics into a form that then fits over the whatever product you're shipping. And so, but they have this side site where they let you buy the growth medium, and then you can use your own forms to create your own thing. So I'm kind of excited about doing this. I'm trying to figure out good things to make with this. I have all sorts of stuff. Yeah, for sure. I live in the Pacific Northwest in Seattle, and there are a ton of mushroom hunters up here. And I don't know, it's in some ways I think it's hilarious because I was always taught to like stay away from mushrooms, especially if you don't know what you're doing. So the idea that I'm growing them in my house is sort of weird. My partner has a green thumb, and so for a holiday, I bought her you can get these kits that are basically like mushroom logs, sort of, and so you just put them in a dark place and make sure that they have everything that they need, and then they grow edible mushrooms. It's really cool. Yeah, right. The mycelial network on Discovery, on Star Trek Disco. Plus tardigrades. There's like two things that are super interesting to me, for sure. And so the fact that they did that on Disco made me really happy. I wish I had spent more time sort of fleshing out the information on what they really thought that was. But I'm sure that some fandom has created an entire theory of how that stuff works. So I should dig that up, make that part of the episode, maybe the video. But yeah, I was thinking that one of the things I'm interested in Portland for sure for mushrooms. One of the things I'm interested in with the mushroom plastics is whether I can make basically billets of it and then machine it on like a CNC router or cut it with hand tools so that it can be used sort of like a source material. So then if I could just make a stack of sort of rectangular pieces of it, then or round stock, and then I could use that as a source of material for whatever project I happen to be working on. I would much rather do that, especially for prototypes. I would much rather do that instead of using plastics that it's a prototype I'm going to use for like a month, and it's a plastic that's going to last for 400 years or more before it breaks down. So I'm not sure. The base that I got is based on hemp. So the way it works is that you get both the mushroom part, and then you get a biomaterial that the mushroom part grows into, and then you break it all into little bits. So all the mycelial pieces, which I can't remember the name of the little strands, but these strands of myceliums, they grow, and then you break it up and then put it in the form, and then when it grows back actually much stronger. So the breaking apart is part of the preparation. And so then you wait another 5 days or so after that breaking up and forming of the material. And then, so one of the things I'm interested in is the base that I'm using is the hemp, chopped up little hemp shreds. But I'm kind of interested in using lots of different kinds of the base. So I don't know if I can get just the mushroom, the mycelial starter, and then add my own base to it. I think that would be really cool because I have a little tiny backyard where we have tons of fibrous materials that I could, we have bamboo and we have poplar, live poplar, and things like that. So I would love to be able to mix my own mycelial stuff in there. Right? Yeah, Lori. So Lori said that it's about, it's such an interesting how the trees and other non-sentients who don't have the same nervous system as we do have their own communication network and are dynamic in our environment without having the same sort of nervous feedback system that we do. Yeah, it's such an interesting thing, right? That we have an example of somebody I'm going to say somebody doing these things in a completely different way than we do. Still DNA based, of course, but also not using our nervous system type things. I think that's really interesting. And the fact that theoretically, I could replace some of the harsher extractions like metals and plastics, things that are harsh on the world to extract and then to deal with the results of. If I could replace that with mushrooms that are part of that bigger network, that seems really interesting to me. So I'm excited about that. One of the things I'm playing around with is, now that I sort of have a schedule for video production, I'm playing around with ways to get people to tell me the questions that they want answered in the videos. So like I put out a tweet asking for people to tell me what they would want to know about the mycelium plastics. I know that a lot of people who have Patreons use their Patreon network chat or their Slack for their Patreons to answer those questions. But yeah, I would love to get into a place where I find an interesting topic that I think a lot of people would be interested in for use in the shop or in production, and then I turn it into something that is basically just answering a bunch of questions that people have about the topic. I think that would be really fun. I love doing research. I love figuring out the answers to questions and then putting it together in a way that is useful. I mean, half of the blog posts that I've written in my life are ones that I had to go back and look at a year or two later or more so that I could remember the results of the research. So if nothing else, just on a purely selfish level, it's nice to have those resources out there. If I was interested in it then, I'll probably be interested in it again. Yeah, and the mycelium plastics, apparently they form, you take them out of the form after 10 days. You put them in the form after 5 days and you take them out of the form after 10 days. And then you bake them to stop the growth. But I think some people are doing this interesting thing where they're taking them out of the forms at 10 days, and then they're not baking them. They're letting them grow for a little bit beyond that. So they get sort of a fuzzy, more of a foamy texture to them, which I think is interesting. So I've been trying to think of projects where I could even like put it in a different form that had a different pattern in it. So I could do a staged growth pattern, just using the fact that the mycelial network will keep going until I bake it to stop it. Yeah, there's so many directions this could go. So I'm excited about making a video about the introductory stuff, and I'm excited to do tons of experimentation to see if I can come up with new product ideas for how to use it, new techniques, new product ideas. Well, this is fun. I have to say, I didn't know how this was going to go, but I actually think it's pretty fun to have the camera on and have a conversation. Turns out it's kind of neat. This was totally on a whim. I follow this YouTuber called Zach Friedman, and he he does a live stream for like 6 to 8 hours every Monday and Friday almost. And I don't know how he does it. He does maintenance on his machines, and he does projects where he's doing like circuit board design, and he does it all while he's talking. He's monitoring the chat, and he's having conversations with people, and it seems like it would be really hard to do both at once. It seems like a skill one would have to build. I'm not sure I have that skill at this point. It seems like it would be quite a bit of work, but I really enjoy the live streams. I rarely watch them live for some reason, but I'll often put them on while I'm working in the shop as sort of background noise, and then I'll tune in when the conversation is interesting or not. But I'm a little bit relieved, so I just put out a video about converting my garage space from a solo shop that only I could understand into what I'm calling a DESA factory, which is just a factory with 10 square meters of floor space. And so I'm actually really relieved. In some ways, I'm sad that I picked that as my first video because it took weeks to make, because I had to remake the whole thing, the whole space. But now I have good lighting that's specifically good for camera work. I have lots of open space, so I can get good shots for the kind of work that I'm doing. So I think I'm really looking forward to getting started doing more and more of that sort of work. Yeah. It's too bad I can't share my screen while I'm just using the normal YouTube Studio. I guess I have to use OBS if I want to do screen sharing and things, which is too bad. But one of the things that I think is interesting is that the forum for Grow Bio, oh, it's not there. Maybe it's the blog that I was looking at. Right, the blog has all these maker spotlights that I think's cool. So like, here's an example. Yeah, so this artist basically made a chair using the mycelial plastics, the mycelial material. So they, which is much bigger than I thought that they would be able to make. I thought that the fact that it was a growing life form would make it so that there were certain limitations on thicknesses or limitations on the type of shapes that could work. But I mean, this chair, even though it's terrible color, is huge compared. So I'm excited about being able to do larger pieces of work. I don't think my understanding is that it's not a good fit for structural work. Like, it's not good if you want it to hold up a bunch of weight or if you need tensile strength. But in terms of being sort of a sort of dense foam type material without a lot of flexibility, I think it'll be pretty effective for that sort of thing. So yeah, and I like this blog, that the fact that they go through and they show you different pieces and parts of sort of a bigger equation that people are using to make mycelial plastics. I do have a little bit of concern about, one thing I don't understand that I need to do research on is how we can get the mycelial growth medium by itself without the fiber that it is mixed with, in order to give it something to grow into and sort of form a material with. You can get all sorts of different mixes that include the fiber from Grow.bio, but I sort of want the sort of just want to figure out how to get just the mycelial bits, and maybe that's the secret sauce that they don't sell that much. I'm not sure. So that's one of the things that I'd like to answer in making the video. So after this live stream, I'm going to go down into the shop and start the process of growing one of the growth kits that they sent out. Yeah, I'd really like to be able to use locally grown, bio-created, bio-grown materials instead of things like plastics that will break down over thousands of years. So especially because I do a lot of prototyping work for clients and for myself, those prototypes are often only needed for a month. That, sometimes it's longer, a year or so. Sometimes they're saved for historical reasons. Like, it's interesting to have the first prototype of some new product category, but most of the time, we iterate and we'll make something and use it for a week or two and then draw the conclusions from that. So having something where we can build that out of a material that will then, we can saturate it with water or camera. We can saturate it with water or something and have it compost is a really exciting thing. So I'm looking forward to learning a lot about mycelium plastics and turning those into something that prototypers can use. And I think one of the cool things about it is that you can grow it in different stages. So my understanding is that you can make the mycelium grow sort of unformed, and then you put it into a form for another 5 days or something, and then you can actually take it out and either bake it to stop the growth, or you can put it in a different form, that has a different texture or lets it grow into a new direction, and it will keep growing. So you can do sort of these staged forms, and I think that's rather unique for a material. With plastics, we would have to do laminations, or we would have to do some other sort of heat forming for that second shaping process operation. But I don't know, I'm really interested in the fact that you can grow this stuff and it sort of will, you can form it and you can encourage it to go into the shapes that you want it to go into. So I have a little bit of experience with injection molding and designing for that. And in some ways, this is just like super slow injection molding. But I'm new for this, so maybe it won't be that for in any real way. That's why I'm doing it, to learn. But yeah, I'm also interested in, there's this material called Pinatex, which is a pineapple fiber-based sort of leather replacement. It's a little leathery, like you can form it so that it has the same imprints that you would get out of some sort of leather, certain types of leather. But I actually don't care about it being like leather. I care about it being like Pinatex. I got a sample of that, and I got some leather working tools, and so I'm going to see if I can turn the Pinatex sample into something that I would have used leather for, but now I can use something that doesn't take an animal to make. It takes a pineapple to make. So thinking about doing a video series about these sort of bio materials that hopefully would not be quite as nasty long-term for our environment. Another one is there's all sorts of different adhesives that are the bioadhesives that have different lifespans. And so because I do a lot of prototyping work, I often only need an adhesive to be, strong for a small amount of time, like a month or so. And but if I use CA glue or any of the, epoxies that are petroleum-based, then they last for much longer than I need them to. So I think I'm going to do some sort of experimentation around the idea of finding the lifespans of different glues that break down into something that's not terrible. Because I think that is just I've never seen anybody do that video before, or even really write about it. So I think I'm going to do something along those lines. Well, it looks like we are about out of the original 30 minutes of time that I intended to do this. And so I'm going to give it another minute. And well, one thing I will say is that I think it's one of the common questions I get about the mycelial plastics is how clean does the work surface need to be? How much does external biology getting into the mix cause a problem? And I think the answer is it causes quite a bit of problems. So one of the things is that everyone talks about you just have to isopropyl alcohol everything. The work surface, your gloves, the forms, so that when you seal them up, the mycelial network is almost the only thing that's sort of growing in there. Otherwise, you get like different colorations or you get different strengths of the material. And so one of the things I'll have to figure out is how to deal with the fact that my shop is dusty and there's swarf all over the place at different times. I clean it up pretty regularly, but if I'm in the middle of a big production run, there's metal shavings that get around, even though I have enclosures on things, but they get around anyway. So that's one of the things I'll need to figure out. Okay, I think that does it for this stream. Thanks for everybody who came by, and yeah, I will see you on the flip side. Take care.